there's a lot of sorrow and grief with the loss of Janet, but it's tempered by the gladness of seeing so many friends and family here to remember her. I want to recognize the members of the immediate family who are here today. In addition to Chris, Kevin, and I want to recognize my brother Kevin's partner, Larry Wente, my sister's partner, Jörg Reinhold, and her children, Ben and Daniel Kleiman. And I also want to recognize my wife, Mari Carmen Martinez, and our two children, Jackson and Ava McAliley. We are very grateful to be here at Plymouth Congregational Church. As many of you know, my mother was not a religious person, but she was a very spiritual person and gave her children a strong sense of right and wrong. And Madi and the kids and I are members here at Plymouth, and we are so appreciative of the love and support of the Plymouth family here. My mother, Janet, was born in 1934 in the Great Depression. Her family moved from New York to Miami when she was 2 so that her dad could find a job. Her first home in Miami was a tent on Biscayne Boulevard because that's all they could afford. She grew up poor, but my mother was smart, she worked hard, and never gave up. Somebody said to me a little while ago as we were gathering today how that's a surprise to know how hard my mother's life was growing up, because she was very elegant. She was very elegant, she was very classy. She always had this almost regal kind of quality about her. I don't know where she got that from, because she wasn't born into it, but that's who she was. Mom graduated from Miami-Jackson High in 1951, and she attended the University of Florida, where she met my father, Tom McAliley. They moved back to Miami in 1959, and that's when they took on the world. And they lived here for the rest of their lives. As many of you know, my mother was involved in the public life of our community. She served on the Dade County School Board from 1980 to 1996. She served in other boards and public committees. She was also involved in many nonprofit and civic organizations her whole life, including literally until her last days. I'm going to let other speakers speak maybe more about some of her accomplishments, but I want to share with you who I think my mother was. My mother knew what she believed, and she wasn't afraid to speak out in favor of what she thought was right. Anybody in this room who knew her knows that that was her. My mother did not see her role in life to just help herself or her own family, but she wanted to make our community a better place so that other people could have the same opportunities that she did. More than anything, Mom believed that everybody should get the same opportunity, regardless of who they are, where they came from, their religion, their family, or anything else other than the content of their character and the strength of their ideas. She always identified with the underdog because that's how she saw herself. Mom always saw herself as the underdog, even to the end. And she had no problem with losing a fight if she thought that she was right. As an aside, I remember when she was on the school board and I was in high school, there was some issue that she was very concerned about. She was trying to end corporal punishment. It was okay to beat kids basically in school, to discipline them in those days. And so she'd run on this as an issue, and when and so they had the first vote, and I when she came back from work and I'd come back from school, I said, "Mom, how did it go?" She goes, "Oh, I lost. I was the only one to vote to end it." And I was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry." She's like, "Yeah, it was bad, but I'm still gonna get it. I'm gonna get it done." And she did. It took a little while, but see, she didn't mind. So she lost that vote. She was the one dissent. She liked dissent. Janet saw racism, bigotry, and sexism firsthand, and she tried to do her part to end it. I think she was known in her time on the school board for always putting the children first and not being beholden to any special interest or any segment of our community. And one of the silver linings about her passing has been I've had the chance to talk to all sorts of people sharing their memories about her. And some of my favorite stories are from friends of mine who, back in the day, as regular kids, without means or connections, went down to the school board to advocate for something, like better school design, or repairs to their school buildings, or more school funding. And while most of the board members, they'd listen to them, but they'd sort of ignore them, my mother would actually listen, would follow up, say to the superintendent, well, superintendent, wait a minute, they just brought up this point, what are you doing about it? And then, in some cases, would mentor them afterwards as to how to achieve their goals. Like, come and meet with me after the meeting so we can talk about how you can be better and more effective in getting what you want. And Mom made them feel like their opinions mattered. She made them feel like they mattered, even when they were just kids. And that's how my mother paid it forward. And today, those children are distinguished architects, including my wife, Mighty Kahneman, who met Mom at the school board before she met me. By the way, there was no connection there, right? But judges, actually, I told you I'd mentioned my good old friend Miguel de la O was one of those kids that was the Jackson Educational Reform Committee or something like that. He went to Jackson High. They called themselves the Jerks. And he went down to the school board and says, why is our school building falling apart? And she's like, yeah, that's a good question. Mr. Superintendent, tell me, when are you going to fix the school building? And another friend who's a prominent real estate developer, that back today, they've had done wonderful things in their lives, but they started out as just a regular kid. And my mom touched them. Mom also wanted to preserve nature so that future generations of children could experience the wonders of the natural world like she did. I have a photo on my desk at work of my mother walking with me as a toddler on the Anhinga Trail in the Everglades. Some of my happiest memories were going on hikes with her in the mountains when I was a boy, or going to the Everglades with her on New Year's Eve, where we'd see the last sunset of the old year and the first sunrise of the new year out in Florida Bay. Mom stayed active and involved her whole life. She didn't believe that changing the world was reserved for the young. Even though Mom was getting older, I don't think she ever saw herself as really old or any less capable of making a difference in the world than when she was younger. She was active in her causes to her last days, serving on the board of her favorite organization, Americans for Immigrant Justice, and organizing political fundraisers. By the way, you know, some people, their idea of a fun time is to like go to a ball game or something like that. Mom loved a good political fundraiser. And you know, she and my father were really good at picking people who are really right, could make a huge difference, and they would often lose. But that didn't matter to her because that's what she cared about. For Americans for Immigrant Justice, she had her last board meeting 2 days before she died. I want to share with you a portion of one of her favorite poems that captures her spirit until the very end. And I want to note our dear friend Sandy Bear, who shared with us that Mom would recite this from memory when they'd be out on their walks at 5 in the morning. And that's when they slept in, by the way. So this is from the poem Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. That was Mom until the end. In the end, all things must yield, and life comes to an end. My mother, Janet, passed away suddenly on September 23rd. She leaves us with wonderful memories and inspires us to believe in a better world. So one of her favorite songs was Amazing Grace. For those of you who can stand, let's all stand and sing it together. And the words are in the program.
It feels like a light went out when Janet left this earth, for me and for countless others. A light of truth and integrity, a light of passionate and unwavering commitment to our children's well-being and to equitable futures for them, a light for fair treatment for all. Janet was a pure spirit. Nobody ever questioned her sincerity or her dedication. She was a beacon of light for all to see and experience throughout her life. She developed these qualities while experiencing hardships as a child, which fueled her efforts with even greater credibility and power. She could relate to people in their struggles, and they felt her deep connection to them. As I reflect upon her impact on me, the first elected official I got to know up close and personal, I realized that she shaped my path in so many countless ways. She was a role model to emulate, and I did. She was strong in her convictions and her expression of them. She was kind in her treatment of staff, teachers, parents, and children, open and participatory in how she approached decision-making. Mitchell Horwich and I, through our work with the Education Advocacy Project at Legal Services of Greater Miami, relied upon her guidance and statesmanship to accomplish many important reforms for our school children. She taught us how to approach the administration, and she partnered with us to succeed. So it is with great pride that I can share that we accomplished many, many significant reforms for our children. We changed the rules to eliminate corporal punishment, referred to as paddling. We prevented many children from being unjustly expelled, suspended, or placed in alternative schools. We worked with a special committee to improve the transition from elementary to middle school, reducing the school dropout rate. We made changes in the Code of Student Conduct and Procedures for promoting and maintaining a safe learning environment, including the requirement that homework be provided for students who are in out-of-school suspensions. We set up 2 specialized middle schools to serve children with severe emotional disabilities. The Crusade Middle School in the south and the Rennick Middle School in the north. And we worked with COPE as well in the north and in the south. We preserved school-based records of complaints against teachers to help assure that children could get fair treatment. And we won the right to free transcripts for students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch and breakfast when those students were involved in appeals of administrative hearings. And finally, with Janet's full support, we won our class action lawsuit, gaining the right to public school enrollment for the then 4-year-old triplets with AIDS who had been excluded from school due to their illness. And when the surviving sister graduated from Miami-Dade College many years later, Janet joined us at the celebratory lunch. After these formative and transformative ventures, Janet became a mentor and friend to me and to my husband, Robert Cava, who was honored to serve as her physician. She even spoke at our son's bris, whether it was for women's rights, immigrant rights, LGBTQ rights, protection of our environment, or protection of our democracy in general. Janet was there. She was always full of encouragement and praise, which, when it involved me, filled me with pride and motivation. And she did this for me continuously, as she did for so many others, I'm sure many in this room. Yet in the end, what will stay with me most is her class. She was beautiful inside and out. She made all of these great contributions to our world in a way that always commanded respect, admiration, and deep listening. She was never harsh, always gracious, yet firm and unflappable. I fervently hope that in some small way I've emulated her style, a style that evidenced her profound and enduring certainty about what is just, what is right, what is fair. The depth and breadth of the impact Janet has had upon my life is incalculable. And while Janet was not a praying person, I think she would agree that there is a great power when collective energy is directed towards a common good. Janet had that power to create that shared purpose. I call upon all of us to channel that power in Janet's memory. Let that be her legacy, and she will continue to walk beside us on this earth, and her light will continue to shine. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for those inspiring and comforting words. And thank you, Neil, as well. Good afternoon, family and friends of Janet McAliley. We are privileged to be together in Janet's beloved Miami to honor the memory of a woman leader par excellence and to grieve with each other. My heart goes out to Chris, Kevin, Neil, Mari Carmen, Ben, Danny, Jackson, and Ava for the loss of your mother, mother-in-law, grandmother, your matriarch, your rock, and your North Star. Janet loved you all dearly, not uncritically, as I know you know, but unconditionally, which I hope you also know. Her life's work was to make a better world for all of you. And to everyone else, clearly the best people in Miami, since you've been touched by Janet, may we mourn together the loss of our friend, our feminist, environmentalist, activist leader, and wise community elder, and celebrate the woman she was. In today's parlance, she was a badass. You know that she started life in a tent here in Miami, not exactly privileged beginnings. She was born the same year as other great women, Gloria Steinem, Maggie Smith, Jane Goodall, and Sophia Loren. I think of Janet as a combination of Gloria Steinem and Joan of Arc with just a hint of Margaret Thatcher. The way she was fearless and unwavering, not her political philosophy. I first met Janet from afar. I was in attendance at a school board meeting, the first of many I would attend as a PTA president, when I became aware of a presence who stood out. Strong, calm, articulate, elegant, dignified, and compelling. Janet only spoke when she had something to say, and her comments were always well-informed and well-reasoned. She exuded intelligence and integrity, and she was passionate about public education and steadfast in her responsibility to the children of Miami-Dade County. My friend and fellow PTA advocate Ruth Melton and I attended many a school board meeting, and we became Janet's groupies, hanging on her every word. It's one thing to be a leader, and it's another thing to be a leader even before you know that people will follow you. Janet led on principle, and she was a visionary. At the school board, which she chaired for 2 of her 16 years, she championed issues that were both controversial and necessary. Students' First Amendment rights, eliminating corporal punishment in public schools, sex education, school clinics, including counseling on sex and birth control, better nutrition in school cafeterias, and even the elimination of sugary soda in schools' vending machines. Fair treatment of and assistance for immigrant children. When the county first adopted an urban development boundary, or UDB, Janet followed with legislation creating what was known as the McAliley line, which restricted the building of schools to a certain distance within the UDB. Concerned about the Everglades and our drinking water supply, Janet correctly reasoned that the school system had a role to play too. Some people think of the school board as a stepping stone for a higher office, and as Seinfeld would say, there's nothing wrong with that. But Janet thought of it as a platform for improving people's lives, especially those of children. She never shied away from an issue because of political expediency or fear of being unpopular. When she saw something, she said something, and then she did something. And there was never another office she wanted to pursue, although she could have been president probably. But she was also practical and knew her limits, especially the budgetary limits of the school board. One time our mutual friend, Abby Chase, then a mother of school-aged daughters, went to Janet's office with a brainstorm to develop a curriculum for students so they could learn critical life skills to be successful. How to manage money, how to invest, what are the qualities of successful people? Abby had a list of experts who could present and thoughts on how to make it happen. Janet smiled and pointed to a 10-inch stack of paper. She said to Abby, "You know what that is? It's the idea pile. Now, if you're willing to meet with 12 high school principals, do the legwork and raise the money, perhaps we can carry out your plan. But unfortunately, the school district doesn't have the budget to investigate the idea, let alone to implement it. Abby left somewhat disappointed, but more educated in how the system worked, and her respect for Janet never wavered. Janet and I shared a friendship that lasted 31 years. She was my friend, my mentor, my collaborator, the only elected official who backed me when I first ran for the county commission. When all the powerful people in the county told me dismissively that I couldn't take on an incumbent and win, Janet believed in me and supported me. And she was my ethics barometer. Sometimes when I faced a difficult decision at the county commission, I would think, what would Janet do? And I had my answer. The Black feminist poet Audre Lorde wrote, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." Janet lived this. I want to tell you about her work with Americans for Immigrant Justice, the organization she gave 20 years to. Her dear friend and the founding executive director of AI Justice, Cheryl Little, who fiercely wanted to be here today to speak, but couldn't because of serious health issues, told me about Janet's dedication. Janet advocated for undocumented immigrants when leaders' voices were few, after the Mariel boat lift and when Hispanic-Black tensions in Miami were at an all-time high. She was a founding member of the Florida Immigrant Advocacy Center, which became Americans for Immigrant Justice, and she served as its chair in the early aughts and was its longest-serving board member. Cheryl said, and you already heard this, that Janet rarely missed a board meeting and attended one just 2 days before she died. Cheryl said, that was Janet, giving of her time to help others to the very end. She always stood up for the underdog. Janet was also the first to raise her hand when Cheryl asked for volunteer board members to accompany her to county jails, private prisons, and rural prisons to visit detained immigrants. Cheryl said that detainees and staff loved her because she was kind, compassionate, and always asked pertinent questions. Janet was a class act. Full stop, said Cheryl. But even before she joined AI Justice, Janet advocated for immigrants as a school board member and asked for a report from the Florida Rural Legal Services so that her colleagues would be advised of the dire situation of Haitian refugees. In the 90s, when Haitian children were here legally with their parents, the US consulate inexplicably ordered the children to go back to Haiti to pick up their visas, even though there was no one to take care of them in Haiti, and even though they'd be missing school. Janet was incensed and called her fellow Janet and close friend, US Attorney General Janet Reno, who granted humanitarian parole so that the children could get back to Miami and be reunited with their parents. Congresswoman Carrie Meek was also instrumental in the effort at the time. On another occasion, when Haitian children were detained at Guantanamo's Camp Buckley, our Janet, called Washington Janet, and thousands of children were saved. Janet McAliley, Janet Reno, and Carrie Meek, our formidable trio who will forever be part of Miami's history. Which brings me to feminism and sisterhood. You have to understand something. There's a certain bond that progressive women elected officials share, grounded in feminist principles, based on the idea that sisterhood is powerful. We lift each other up, we encourage, we collaborate, we give constructive feedback, we defend each other, and we host fundraisers for each other. Maybe it's the rough and tumble of campaigning or the moment of stage fright that occasionally grips us when faced with a hostile audience. Maybe it's the thick skin we have to cultivate, or the annoying sexism we have to confront, or arguing a position when the stakes are high. Early in my tenure on the county commission, I must have done something noteworthy because one of my constituents told me that I might become the Janet McAliley of the county commission. To me, there was no higher compliment. I used to tell Janet that Daniela and I stood on her shoulders and that she was our role model and hero. She always responded modestly and even incredulously when I sang her praises, but I know she appreciated it. And of course, Janet and I were so proud when Daniela was elected our first woman mayor. One of the things I loved about Janet was that she would always wear her heart on her sleeve or on her chest. She was last seen proudly sporting a Val Demings button. And every election season, when she could still drive, there were more bumper stickers on her car than bumper. You never had to figure out where she stood on anything. She would be only too happy to tell you in that calm, measured way of speaking that somehow always packed a punch. Janet and I also shared a love of nature, and years ago I was intrigued to accept her invitation to take a bike ride at Shark Valley in Everglades National Park at sunrise. We were both early risers, so that wasn't a problem. The dramatic sky, the cloud shadows, and the cacophony of the Audubon birds were magical and magnificent. And we were the only humans there to witness and hear it all. And of course, we hashed out the issues of the day after our ride. Whenever I faced something difficult, Janet would say to me, "Strength and courage, babe." She had an abundance of both. Now when I think about what would Janet do, there's a long list. There's so much to be done that it's daunting and exhausting. The progress so many of us thought we made is slipping through our fingers, and we're Sisyphus in Hades rolling the boulder uphill. Women's reproductive rights, the right to our autonomy and self-determination rapidly being dismantled. Far-right ideology being injected into our public schools. Threats and legislative action curtailing LGBTQ rights. The diminishing of voting rights, especially for people of color. Rampant gun violence and mass murders. The Orwellian spread of lies and disinformation. The ongoing mistreatment of immigrants who have come to this country desperately searching for a better life. And all of this under the shadow of the looming deadly threat to the very fiber of our democracy. Oh, you're thinking, this is getting so political. Well, I don't apologize. Everything Janet did was political. It was her life. So if you want to honor her legacy, you'll channel your inner Janet. You'll write generous checks to progressive candidates and causes. You'll host fundraisers. You'll appear at demonstrations. And you'll volunteer your time and talent for righteous causes. You'll take a bike ride at sunrise in Shark Valley, and you'll understand why the Everglades is worth saving. You'll vote, and you'll get others to vote. You'll speak up and not stay silent in the face of injustice. You will act. There is a Buddhist saying, "The trouble is, you think you have time." My friends, time is not on our side, and our time is now. Janet left us while we're in the midst of a maelstrom, but I can hear her strong, calming voice in my head, and I hope you'll hear it in yours. Strength and courage, babe. I'll miss my friend Janet, and I know you will too. She lived her life with purpose, and she lived it to the fullest. Now she belongs to the ages, and Miami will never be the same.
and Anita, hearing you play Simple Gifts so gorgeously while the heavens thundered is truly extraordinary. And thank you for sharing music today that my mother adored. In 1924, the poet Rainier Maria Rilke wrote, "The great secret of death, and perhaps its deepest connection with us, is this, that in taking from us a being we have loved and venerated, death does not wound us without, at the same time lifting us toward a more perfect understanding of this being and of ourselves." And so here we are, together, sharing our tender hearts, our memories, and sharpening our understanding of Janet, of Mom. Thank you, Daniela Levine Cava, our wonderful mayor, and Katie Sorensen, who is on our county commission, but both of you are so much more than all of that. But you're particularly known for that aspect of your public lives. Thank you for so beautifully recounting Mom's passionate efforts to try to balance the scale. Her heart ached, and her sense of injustice was ignited for those who had little, or were mistreated, or were marginalized because of some affiliation assigned them. Her response? She got to work. She spoke up, she reached out, she organized, and gave generously of her time, of her smarts, and of her own resources. Mom was just as passionate about the survival of our democracy, no more so than in recent years. She vocally, energetically engaged in our political process because she understood that this is our chance to try to protect our freedoms. Teddy Roosevelt said, "The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena." We know it belongs to the men and women in the arena, and that's where Mom thrived. It gave her life meaning. She could not sit on the sidelines. But of course, I knew her as Mom. She was my cheerleader, my #1 teacher, my biggest fan. She was always wanting to help when the chips were down. And she did, I must say, have this imperfection, her over-the-top praise for me, Neil, Kevin, and time her daughter-in-law, Mari Carmen, of course her grandchildren, and then Kevin's partner, Larry, and mine, Jörg. Here's some of what Mom loved outside of the arena: songbirds, sunrise, classical music, being with friends, her home, and kale. Mom loved cooking nutritious meals that were delicious, which she did up to the very end. She also loved clothes and shopping. We spent oh so much time among the racks and in the dressing rooms. And before every public appearance, there was a sharp, analytical consideration of just what the right outfit was. And of course, she was always beautiful. Now, she was not your typical mom. She was an early feminist, and her message to me was clear: educate yourself and make sure that you are financially independent. In 1975, when I was graduating from high school, Mom took me to Tallahassee to join a boisterous rally urging our legislature to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Florida never did, but the experience was inspiring. And I'd like to note that long before Hillary Clinton, I wore a white pantsuit. As kids, we did not always share Mom's idea of fun. One Christmas day, we abandoned the gifts, and she brought us to Reynolds Park to look for the rare scarlet ibis that had been sighted there. Hours searching for a pink dot on a faraway tree. And then there were the childhood trips to the Everglades. A lot of grass. But later, we all thanked Mom many times for planting that seed. Kevin, Neil, and I came to love our Everglades and most any opportunity to be in the wilderness. And this, in turn, we've shared with our children. This, in my mind, is one of Mom's great legacies. Mom also wasn't your typical grandmother. When her first grandchild, my son Ben, was born, she was especially excited to read to him. One night, while they read in the bedroom, my husband Gary and I heard her through the intercom that was in the bedroom, and we were in another room of the house. And she modified a book about a fireman. She advised 2-year-old Ben that this author had made a mistake, that this was a firefighter, because boys and girls could grow up to fight fires and help people. And when she was finished, she left the bedroom and came to us triumphantly and said, and I'm not making this up, I cannot wait to read him the Bill of Rights. And speaking of the Bill of Rights, last week, as Neil looked through Mom's papers, who I must say were exceptionally organized, he texted a photo to Kevin and me of multiple pocket constitutions, and he wrote, 5 and counting. Then there was the 4th of July. Many of you know that Mom celebrated by inviting friends over, serving a delicious meal, and then passing around the Declaration of Independence because everybody took their turns reading it. She was a patriot. Ben and Daniel and Jackson and Ava, you brought Grandma so much joy. We know you have your own special memories of times talking with her when she asked about your lives and when she engaged you in conversation about the world. May she inspire you throughout your lives as you find your own ways to care for all beings who are suffering and our endangered planet and our precious democracy. The poet Mary Oliver wrote, "Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" The book of Mom's life has been written, and what she did with her wild and precious life was extraordinary. For those who can, would you rise and sing one of Mom's favorite songs, the Battle Hymn of the Republic? a privilege to stand here with all of you and sing that song with you. For those who are able and would like to, feel free to join us at Neil and Maria Carmen's house. Their address is in the program. And thank you.